New York Mets owner Steve Cohen has revealed the truth on the Mets free agency that has been insane thus far, regarding also some new names that have popped up and the Mets' plans going forward into what has been an absolutely wild free agency to start off for the Mets that over the last 2 weeks has seen the team lose Brandon Nimmo in a trade, watch Edwin Diaz leave the Mets and not give him a chance to make him a second offer before he signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and then also Pete Alonso signing with the Baltimore Orioles. We're going to go over Steve Cohen's comments on the team and where the Mets are going from here after they've lost a bunch of their staple players, and the team will be a new-look Mets roster next season. Obviously, fans are very upset right now, even though there was some drawbacks with Pete Alonso, with the fact that the Mets didn't make an offer because they saw where everything was going and didn't want to pay that much money for an aging first baseman who's not a good base runner or fielder and has had spotty contact throughout his career, and also Edwin Diaz, who is getting a bit older as well, though fans still rightfully so upset in a lot of ways, considering the money that Steve Cohen has to spend on this team and is willing, or apparently was willing, to spend on the Mets. However, right now things have started to take a turn. But before we jump into all this, guys, here's the deal. I know we're upset right now. I know everything is not the way that we saw it going, but with 70% of you guys not subscribed to Mets Digest right now, make sure to subscribe so you stay up to date with everything on the Mets. I understand if you're a little bit dejected right now, but we are still going to have fun on this channel. We're still going to talk about the Mets plans and understand that this is still a rich team that, things can always still turn around and the Mets can look at this offseason at least somewhat positively. The Diaz thing will leave a bad taste in our mouths for sure, a bit more than Alonso, which was definitely trending in this direction over the last couple of weeks. But let's talk about this because obviously, guys, there is a lot to go over on the Mets, including Steve Cohen talking to the media after what has been not a very good 48 hours to be a Mets fan. I mean, with Edwin Diaz walking out the door after not giving the Mets a second chance to give them an offer, sort of fix their offer so he could stay with the Mets, Diaz left for the Dodgers in a move that just looked bad for the New York. Now, things also got worse when Pete Alonso would decide to leave the following day for the Mets because, well, frankly, here's the deal. Even though it was a lot of money for Alonso, whenever Alonso, if he was going to leave, which it felt more and more likely as time went on, it's still crazy to imagine Pete Alonso in any uniform that's not a Mets uniform. With the way things started and the way things were going, we thought this would be a team that Pete Alonso would be a staple on to win a World Series, not end up leaving for the Baltimore Orioles when the Mets ultimately decided to not give him an extension, despite the fact that this man makes a ton of money. But obviously, as we know, the Mets as a whole were very lukewarm on Alonso last time around as well, so it's not the most shocking thing. Now, with the comments that we've seen made by Cohen, it's interesting to say the least. He said, "I totally understand the fans' reaction. There is lots of offseason left to put a playoff team on the field." And in fairness to Cohen, he's not wrong. There's a lot of offseason left, and there are great players left. However, fans are very upset with them saying, "It's okay, Steve, you got your casino. You don't have to worry about us or lie to us anymore." Seeing other fans like Dart is king right here, talking about Jackson Dart. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this dude said in 2020, if they don't win a ring in 5 years, it's a failure, which is true, and it has been a failure, especially after looking at these last two seasons, or well, this off season and then last season, I should say, because the season before that was great. And then Mets Make Me Drink, I swear that's not me, said, "If this is why no one should ever trust or worship billionaires, dude used the Mets to get the fans to go get a casino for him." And then we do see one fan saying, "I might be in the minority, but I still believe him. Maybe I'm stupid for that." And you're not fully stupid because, look, Cody Bellinger, the Mets have been linked to for a while, is still a free agent. Scott Boras wants a 7-year deal for him. He had a .272 batting average last year, 29 home runs and an .813 OPS, while being one of the best fielding outfielders in baseball. The fear is that most of his hits and home runs and his best games were at Yankee Stadium, a stadium that's notoriously easy to hit in, especially for lefties who can run the bases like Cody Bellinger, who was set up for success with that short Porsche out in the Bronx. However, at the same time, we know Bellinger's a good player. We know he could get it together, and at the end of the day, we've seen him play above average baseball now for the past couple of seasons again. Bellinger is back. Is he going to be that MVP that he once was? No, but he does give the Mets a bunch of interesting options, while also kind of gives them a backup first base option, because nobody should pay Cody Bellinger $30 million and to have him play first base. It's a complete and utter waste of time. Now, there's also Kyle Tucker. Tucker has been phenomenal throughout his last couple seasons in the MLB. He dealt with an injury this season, so his home runs were down to only 22, but he is a lefty who was playing in Wrigley Field, which is very hard to hit home runs. You could ask Bellinger as well. And he also had an .841 OPS. He did this with an injury as well. So we see there are top-notch options. There's guys out there who the Mets can go and get. There are stars out there. The two biggest stars of this offseason are still available. The Mets can turn this thing around. It's just as long as if they have interest in them. And why wouldn't they have interest in them? They're the Mets. They can spend money. They can go out there and get these guys. They have interest, right? Right? Well, hopefully they do. Well, as mentioned by Tim Healy, the Mets always seemed lukewarm at best about bringing back Pete Alonso this offseason. One first base solution they floated internally, a platoon of Jeff McNeil, who plays everywhere, and free agent geriatric Paul Goldschmidt. Guys, I've threatened it. I've threatened it. I really have. Over the last couple videos I've made, I've threatened it. I really have. I'm done, man. Cheers. Not lying. This is a White Claw. I guess it's not a beer, but same difference. All right, that's better. Okay. Man, I thought this was black cherry. It was raspberry. That was a surprise. Look, here's the point. With the Mets right now, this team cannot go out there and do this and call it a successful offseason. David Stearns should be fired if that's what the offseason is, and there's no way around that. Let's be honest with ourselves. That's absolute lunacy. Look, Goldschmidt on the surface didn't have a terrible year as a platoon bat. Had a 274 batting average, 10 home runs, and a 104 OPS plus. He had good things about him. He's a good leader, and honestly, I watched a lot of Yankee games last year. He still fields well at the first base position. He does. He is a good fielding first baseman even at 38 years old. He's one of the better fielders, which is something to work with. However, he's 38 years old and well removed from that MVP season now. It's been 3-4 years now since Paul Goldschmidt was that superstar player on the Cardinals. With that in mind, if the Mets go out there and replace Pete Alonso with Paul Goldschmidt, I mean, is David Stearns nuts? Does he have zero? This is not a small market team. This is the New York Mets. And David Stearns is a small market GM, which is why he's not good at this for the Mets. But this is just not the way to manage. I'm fine with losing Alonso if there's ways to fix it. Like, they're like, hey guys, surprise, Juan Soto's done in the outfield because he's not a good outfielder. We're putting him at first base, and we're putting Kyle Tucker out in right field, and we're putting Cody Bellinger in center field while we wait for Carson Bench to show up. Congratulations. All of a sudden, that's a good offseason. That's a great offseason, in fact. If you added a pitching arm like Michael King, who does feel very likely to sign with the Mets, that all of a sudden is a very successful offseason. The one big issue is the bullpen is still super, super, super weak. The Mets need to make a bunch of moves. I mean, even just re-signing Diaz and Alonso was not going to fix this team, in fairness to the Mets. But not re-signing Diaz feels like a massive blunder. Not re-signing Alonso feels like a replaceable situation is the best way to put it, if you ask me. Now, Goldschmidt, he's a platoon option, and frankly, against lefties, he's still great. The man had a 336 batting average with 7 home runs and 16 RBIs. He still hit well, had a 981 OPS against lefties. If you want to platoon Paul Goldschmidt with somebody, I'm not going to lose my mind over that, personally. But if you're going to just say, here's our replacements for Jeff McNeil and Paul Goldschmidt, and operate like a small market team like that and not sign anyone else, then all of a sudden, David Stearns is high off run prevention and does not understand just what the hell is going on. McNeil is not good. He did not have a good year last year. He's a great fielder, but really you're going to stick him at first and be like, hey, well, here we go. This makes sense. No, it doesn't. First basemen have to be good at hitting because fielding at first base is not all that important if we're being honest. He had 12 home runs and a 243 batting average last year. That would be a terrible move for the Mets, and if this is actually what's going on, then everyone needs to take a real long, hard look at Steve Cohen and understand if he's really that guy or not, or if Mets fans did just get duped about a casino. But what do you guys think? Do you think we're being duped? Do you think the Mets will turn it around? Let me know in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Have a great day. I'll catch you later.